Reporting to you live from our dystopian present. We're going to discuss Saudi Arabia and the relationship that we have with that foreign power. And I want to give a little context to anybody who happens to watch this video so that when in future discussions or news articles or whatever, when they encounter apologies for our relationship with this power, that you can know what's actually at stake. So we've basically had full sort of diplomatic relations with Saudi Arabia since 1933. And so that we're absolutely clear, they're a straight up totalitarian conservative Islamic monarchy. The rule of law is iron and the power is 100% with the monarchy. And they have so chosen to exercise that power by creating what is arguably the most or among the most repressive Islamic regimes that exist. I don't think it's hyperbole to make that statement. I'm open to criticism on that regard. But as far as I understand it, that's the case. The Freedom House's annual survey of political and civil rights consistently ranks Saudi Arabia as among the worst of the worst. There's a group called MSL Group, and that is an American organization who consistently engages in propaganda for sale, for hire, for Saudi Arabia, and they whitewash and otherwise undermine the public discourse on the crimes that Saudi Arabia is committing. So I just have a list of some general topics that I think everybody should know about in regard to Saudi Arabia. And so I'll list them, and then if you want to jump in and say something, that's fine. So the first thing is they have judicial corporal punishment, which is caning, whipping, stoning, strapping. They do this to rape victims for the crime of adultery. So if you get raped, they will then stone you or pardon me, they'll whip you, strap you, whatever they choose at the time. And it can be pretty horrific numbers of lashings to the point where they will administer it over a course of time. Right? You have to go get whipped 30 times, and then you have to come back next week and be whipped 30 more times until you've worked off your 200 whippings. People can be sentenced to 10 or more years in prison and thousands of lashes for apostasy. So they will, the state will quite literally physically abuse you and imprison you for a decade if you don't agree with their religious tenets. And when human rights organizations have tried to criticize these practices, the response that they get from Saudi Arabia is basically, sorry, bro, this is just the way that we are, and it's been that way for so long, butt out. That's their response, and we accept that. Should I just keep going, or is there anything burning that needs to escape from your brain piece?
Nothing burning, but the ideology there behind the reason why we let it escape is because I'm sure they mask it in this process of, oh, well, it's a religious belief, and it's, this is the way our government is designed, and like there's a rationale that for some reason works, but like it doesn't work when other governments do it. Like that doesn't make any sense. So I mean, do you know anything more about that excuse, or like how does that? Because that just baffles me.
I don't know what to tell you other than that's what they say, and this has been accepted to some degree by the international community as an excuse for them to continue these behaviors. Going ahead, because it gets worse. They routinely practice torture on prisoners to extract confessions. They do public executions, including straight up public square beheadings, regularly, routinely. They do public stoning and crucifixion. That's something that's still happening in the world, and we're selling this country weapons.
So it's my understanding it's not just that we're selling them weapons, like they're also...
Well, there's more, and we'll get to that. But I'm saying, like, this is one of our chief business partners, friends in that region, countries that we schmooze with, so on and so forth. People can be beheaded in Saudi Arabia. You can have your head chopped off in the public square for adultery and witchcraft. So, straight up, like Salem witch hunt style. I mean, I guess they're not burning people, so I guess don't say that too fucking loud, because maybe they just haven't thought of it.
I'd like to know the evidentiary standard to prove witchcraft.
I'm sure it's intensely rigorous.
Must be.
They did a mass execution of civilians who confessed under torture to dubious terrorism charges. These people were members of the Shia minority. This is straight up just they did a government mass, like they executed 30-some people who were being accused of essentially dissidents, but they couched it in terrorism. I mean, Saudi Arabia is a terrorist state, so the idea that they would be executing people for terrorism and that it would be just in some way is absurd. Ironic, yes, but also absurd. So sometime on or around the end of Ramadan, which I believe ends on June 4th, which is today. Yeah? Or is today the 3rd?
Tomorrow, but by the time this goes up...
By the time this goes live, it'll either be today, as you watch this, or yesterday. That's when Ramadan ends, is on the 4th. And they're going to execute 3 basically moderate scholars. I don't know how to pronounce their names. But an organization from Turkey, this is from a separate article that I just found today. This guy from Turkey wrote a letter to the king of Saudi Arabia saying, like, bro, don't fucking start killing scholars. What is wrong with you? You're gonna fuck everything up. Because for me, this is the line. When they start killing moderate scholars, that's when I think the people should rise up and take the government. It's revolution time. I'm totally unabashed. Like, that's when I advocate for fucking pitchforks, is when they start fucking moderate scholars. These aren't even radicals. These are like respected, lifelong. And anyway, this is what he says. He says, that which will bring disaster to you in executing Islamic scholars, which was recently announced. Scholars are the inheritors of prophets, and each scholar is a world on their own. The death of a scholar is like the death of the world. The killing of a scholar is like the killing of the world. I don't agree with everything in there. I don't agree with every word choice. But the sentiment I agree with. He noted that scholars are... Pardon?
I was going to say, and I think it's worth noting that there was a time in history where Islamic and Middle Eastern scholars were the height of science in the world.
For sure.
They were a fount of a lot of human knowledge that we still rely on today.
Well, and then he makes this other point, which I think you will agree with and have something to say about. He notes that scholars are treasures of the Muslim community. I would argue that a good scholar is a treasure to us all, to the world, but the Muslim community, and therefore that this case is not a domestic one. He says, the matter of Islamic scholars is not an internal affair. The scholars in question are assets who are acknowledged and revered by the whole Muslim community. They are not your subjects. They are our common treasures, whose advice we heed, and who are, because of light, with their knowledge and stance, the sin of detaining them even an hour in the dungeon, let alone executing them, is enough to destroy an entire life. It looks like either my copy-paste failed a little bit there, or perhaps it was a translation error or whatever. But you get the idea. The idea that he's putting forward here is that you can't just fucking execute scholars, because they're not yours. They're the pursuers of general knowledge. They advise. They write books that are then disseminated out into the world. And I would totally agree. Like, if the U.S. government was like, we're going to execute Martha Nussbaum, I would fully expect scholars around the world and governments to decry that as, if they were going to execute Noam Chomsky. I wouldn't expect that just Americans would rise up. The Brits would rise. Other countries would rise as well to say, a scholar is I guess I just want to even say untouchable. You should not be executing fucking scholars. these guys are also, I think they're priests as well. So I'm not saying that means that it's okay to execute them, but I'm saying they might not be super paragons of the same virtues that I might extol. But this is odious, gross, and you watching this, listening to me, you should be thinking, why the fuck are these our like our best buddies? And if you're thinking that, I encourage you, take it a step further and wonder, it's no mistake that we're so similar to this nation in the way that we are approaching many major issues right now: immigration, religion. Listen to what's being said about Ilhan Omar.
Yeah, I was going to jump in, and I think conservative philosophies in general, from my anecdotal experiential observations, tend to create these sort of environments where you get oppression and you get the destruction of scholarship and all of that. I mean, I'll talk to people occasionally about, oh, I found out there's this interesting field of study where they study X, and it's this, hyper specific thing, and people go, oh, well, yeah, but why do we need that? Like, scholarship is about generating the base of human knowledge and bringing it up and cultivating everything we can know for all of the benefit of all humanity.
When you're executing people who work in universities and quietly write books, you are always on the wrong side of history.
Yeah.
Every time.
I mean, there's just our human history as we know it is rife with, for example, like the first thought that comes to mind, the Gregorian calendar. That's the modern calendar we use today. It was developed in a monastery by a Catholic monk. I mean, this was, the Catholics still have an observatory run by monks that participates in active science that contributes to human knowledge. That astronomers worldwide know these people and work with them.
Yeah, I don't want to sort of like go off on this tangent here because there's a lot to say, because I don't necessarily agree with the premise that you're starting to edge closer to. And so,
well, my premise is that I don't care if you're a religious scholar or not.
I do care about that. Is my point.
I do. It does matter, but as far as Saudi Arabia is concerned, like, I don't care that these people might also be priests or what have you. Like, you shouldn't be murdering them on the basis.
Yes, in this case, we agree on that score. But generally speaking, I don't want to sign on and say that. And just know that the last thing was those were Mike's words, not mine.
I'm not saying I advocate for religious scholarship, period. I'm just saying that, we shouldn't be murdering them on that basis.
No, that absolutely not.
Killing scholars, period.
Yes, that's the big takeaway from all this is their government has already dismembered and murdered a journalist, and now they are going to up the ante by murdering scholars. And they just got done doing a mass execution. They're testing the waters. And then there's more that we have to talk about. The saga continues. So, another thing, women can't vote. They need permission from a male to travel, work, and marry. Do I need to say anything else? Like, you're gross. That's fucking nasty.
And if you're one of those guys out there that jokingly says things like, oh, go back in the kitchen and make me a sandwich, like, you're supporting that. That's the ideology that you're fighting for.
And I don't know, there might be some of our cohort on the left who would not like my general at some of these things, and they might make some arguments that are cogent. But women should be able to vote.
And drive.
Well, and the fun thing with the women driving is they then imprisoned the people who protested. So they made this token like, very well, you may drive. But you challenged our power. And so therefore they punished the ones who had actually protest. Because they're a repressive, disgusting, they have a fucking king. Shouldn't that be our first question when we're thinking about trading with people? Is, hey, now you don't have any kings, right? We're not into that. That's literally, that is the basis of our fucking country, is we're not into that. You don't have any kings, do you? And when they went, oh yeah, hi, I'm the king. We went, we're gonna hard pass. Isn't that how that should fucking go?
Yep. Unless it happens to be like, oh, you're a king, so you're a fake king, like the English Queen, right? Like you don't have real power for over trade.
And he said, "Oh no, I routinely repress my people. You don't have kings anymore."
Hard pass. Thanks.
Hold on, before you decide, come watch a beheading. Come watch one beheading, and then I promise you're gonna fucking love this government, and you will say it's the best government.
You know, is there popcorn?
There will be popcorn. There will be popcorn.
Hard pass. I just, it's tempting. I mean, I appreciate the offer, but no, I'm good.
This comedy skit has brought us to the fact that we do trade with Saudi Arabia, and we sell them all the weapons that they are now using to perpetuate a genocide in Yemen.
Wait, this is real. That fucking sucks.
Here's some information about Yemen. They're one of the poorest countries in the Middle East, and this is I'm like scrubbing bubbles here. I'm doing the work so you don't have to. This is just distilled, basically, Wikipedia research. In 2011, authoritarian dictator Ali Abdullah Saleh was forced to give power to Abdrabba Mansour Hadi, I believe is the pronunciation. I have no idea if I'm getting that right. Hadi he took over and did not usher in the stability that was expected. And in 2014, a rebel group called the Houthis took over a bunch of territory, including the capital of Sana'a. Then in 2015, Saudi Arabia and all of its fucking buddies, backed by our money and weapons, decided that they were going to start bombing and otherwise attacking the Houthis because they wanted to restore the Hadi government. The reason that they're doing this is because they're afraid that Iran is going to get a foothold in Yemen, because Iran is Shia majority, whereas Saudi Arabia is Sunni majority. So they want to get rid of the Houthis and restore the government so that it is also Sunni majority. So then this continued for a couple years, and then in 2017, infighting on both sides sort of led to a stalemate. And now they've been assaulting this place called Hudaydah, which is evidently that's the main port through which we would get humanitarian aid to people, and they're blockading it. Ergo, they're preventing food and medical supplies from going in. So this is from BBC here. At least 8.4 million people are at risk of starvation, and 22.2 million people, 75% of their population, is in need of humanitarian assistance. And that's according to the UN. Severe acute malnutrition is threatening the lives of almost 400,000 children under the age of 5. There's a fucking cholera outbreak just ravaging them, destroying them. Thousands of people are dying as we speak. Their hospital systems basically don't function anymore. And all of this time, our fucking best buddy that we're selling all our weapons to, that our idiot fucking president was shaking hands with and holding up posters talking about how great it is that we're selling all these bombs. This is what they're doing. They're starving, literally they're starving hundreds of thousands and potentially millions of people and committing barbaric, ridiculous, unforgivable genocide on our behalf. And don't forget, the people that they're bombing, the Houthis, they fight Al-Qaeda, who are the ones that fucking attacked us on September 11th to begin with, out of Saudi Arabia. The whole thing is farcical, absurd. We are falling into a dystopian pit from which the only plausible escape is complete thermonuclear annihilation.